Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, I actually want to talk about something a little more serious that might happen to you in your Mitsubishi Montero. So I'm sitting in a new Montero right now that I just bought, and it's got an issue that I want to address, and that's premature brake failure. So what's happening right now is my brake booster accumulator is leaking. That's the thing that holds pressure that allows me to activate my power brakes. So I know it's leaking because I can actually hear it when I press my foot on the pedal. Take a listen to this video and see if you can hear it too. So thankfully that sound isn't super loud, which means the leak isn't that bad. So I'm gonna jump in and fix this before it becomes a bigger issue. So let's go under the hood and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here's where the brake booster and brake booster accumulator is located underneath the hood, but I actually have one that's on the bench. So rather than explain it to you here in the car, let's go to the bench and I'll show you what one of these looks like blown apart. So here's what the hydraulic brake booster looks like taken all the way apart. Now this is the whole unit. So this is the brake booster that you'll see in this car. This functions just like most brake boosters would, in the sense that it takes pressure from your foot and that translates into hydraulic pressure using this control unit, and it pushes it all throughout the system. This is where the plugs go. This is where your foot and the pedal would go. And so that's this side. And that's not the part that usually fails. Not going to get a leak from here. Sometimes the ECUs fail, but most of the time the problem is over here. So this has got two different things to it. So this whole unit is called the hydraulic brake booster, or sometimes the HBB, and it's got two components that fail. The first one I want to talk about is this accumulator right here. This accumulator is functionally basically just a storehouse for pressure. So the motor builds pressure and it stores it inside of here. Now you'll notice this one right here, this is gold and more of a cylinder. There's also a black one that's more of an orb. The round ones that are more like an orb that are black, those are going to be for the 2001 and 2002 models, and they do not have traction control. These ones, anything 2003 and up, 2003 to 2006, is going to have this longer cylinder one, and this is to increase the capacity so that you can use traction control. You don't swap them; they will screw on, but you want to keep the one that was on there with the one that was on there. So those tend to fail, and they tend to chirp. So what it'll do is it'll start to leak right here from this spot, or it'll start to leak internally, and it'll start to chirp at you. So you'll press the brakes, and you'll actually hear a chirp, chirp, chirp come back at you. It kind of sounds like an exhaust flap is loose underneath the car. Exhaust shield might be scratching up against something, but you need to replace this because what it's doing is it's leaking down pressure even when you're not pressing the brakes. That can lead to premature motor failure. So this is the other thing that fails all the time in these is these motors. Now, it's a very simple motor, very standard. However, it tends to fail. And there's a few things that make it fail. Most of the time, overheating them will make them fail. So if you're using the brakes a lot, if you're off-roading and you're using traction control a lot, that can cause premature overheating. In addition, if this is leaking, then it causes the motor to work harder, which would cause this to fail. So if this fails, this could follow suit. So replace that right away because that's cheaper and easier than all of this. So just like a regular brushed motor, you've got these little pickups and these brushes right here, and it spins around. This sits inside of this magnetic cup, and that builds pressure, which is stored in here, which this booster uses to push the hydraulic fluid to the rest of the system. So because I'm hearing that sound, I know that the issue that I'm facing is with this brake booster accumulator. So let's get that thing pulled out. So the first thing we need to do in this process is bleed all of the excess pressure out of this. This is under a ton of pressure, and so if you were to just unscrew it, it might explode, it might do damage to something else, and so you do not want that. So the first step is to get inside the car with the car off and bleed down that pressure. Let me show you how to do that. All right, now inside the car with the car off, you're going to depress or pump the brake pedal 40 times. So you want to pump this 40 times, all the way in, all the way out. And what you're doing here is you're bleeding off all of the pressure that's inside the system. So as you do this, the pressure is going out to all the brakes. It's not staying in the accumulator, but because the car is off, it's not regenerating that. It's not putting pressure back in the system. So after you do this 40 times, there should be no pressure inside of that accumulator. All right, when you get to the end of about 40 times, the brake pedal does start to feel different. It has a really hard spot right here, and that's because you're not actually getting any boost to assist you in your assisted brakes. And so it will feel different. 40 times is more than enough to bleed off the pressure, and that's why they say to do it in the manual. And so that's what I've done here is now I've got that hard spot, and I know that there's no pressure inside the accumulator, so it's safe to take it off. Now back on the engine side, you're going to want to pull this off right here. And as you can see, there's not really a way to grab it. The older models, the 01 and 02, they have a 21 millimeter nut at the top, and that's a really easy way to get that off. These ones require either a special tool or I'll show you how to use a strap wrench to get that off. But rather than explain it in this cram space, let me take you to the bench where I have one pulled out and I can show you how it works. All right, over here on the bench, you can see an accumulator that I pulled out of another car, and you can see that I've got it off. So this accumulator just threads on right here into the brake booster. And there's a little O-ring here. That could be a cause of the leak. More often than not, it's an internal leak, and so this whole unit needs to be replaced. They're about $200, but it is well worth it. Your brakes are important. So, the other thing to note is there is brake fluid in there, and there's this little plunger guy. This goes right in here, and I think it's some kind of pressure release valve. Not 100% sure, but that's what that looks like. So if you're pulling it out and you hear something drop, you gotta go find that. So that's what it looks like outside of the car. Now, let me show you how to get this off with a strap wrench. So here's my handy dandy strap wrench, and all it's gonna do is it's gonna wrap around the brake booster accumulator, and then I'm gonna turn it counterclockwise. This helps me get a really good grip on round things. I found with a little bit of force, I'm able to usually break that free. Once I break that free, I can twist it right out. So let's see if I can pop this off. All right, finally, after a bunch of trying, I think I finally got this out. Now, this has got pretty long threads on it, so you're gonna wanna unscrew it, and it's probably good to have some rags or something that you don't care about underneath this. There is a little bit of brake fluid that tends to get in here, and you don't want that getting on your paint. So I'm gonna put some rags under there and back this all the way out. All right, and there is the accumulator removed. Take it over the bench and let's check this out. All right, as you can see, this looks okay. I think this just is leaking internally, so I'm gonna swap it out with another one. If this O-ring was maybe damaged or had something an issue with it, maybe I just swap that out and throw it back in and see. But I've got another one already, so I'm gonna throw that in and see if it fixes my issue. Once again, make sure that you do not drop this little plunger that's in there. You wanna make sure that that stays inside of the brake booster just like it is. So now we're gonna drop this one in. Gotta make sure that you go into the little plunger part first, otherwise you won't be able to get it on there, and you definitely don't want to cross thread this, so this should be spinning on nice and easy. Now, the one problem with using the strap wrench to get this off is you're not gonna be able to get this to a specific torque spec, and so I get it snug, and then I'll come back with the strap wrench, I'll give it a good, I'll make sure it's nice and snug. You don't want to over torque it, but you know, just if you got a good feel for it, make sure it's really on there. That's gonna hold your pressure. And then you're ready to see if it works. So with the new one installed, let's go in the car, let's fire it up, and let's see if this thing will build pressure and not leak. So just like before, inside the vehicle, I like to do this without the motor running so I can hear it better. So put the key in, turn it to accessory mode. I can hear it building pressure. Okay, so it's done building pressure. I'm not hearing any sounds. Once again, gonna step on the brakes. Okay, no squeaks. And there you go. Not squeaking, building pressure. This thing is fixed. So now I'm driving around, pressing on the brakes, and it brakes well, it's holding boost, and I'm not hearing that sound anymore, which means that the brake booster is holding the pressure. So there you have it. And just replacing one simple part. It wasn't that expensive. It didn't take that long. Now I don't have the risk of brake failure. So if you're hearing this, if you're suspecting it, I would encourage you, do it as soon as possible, because replacing this part is really easy. Replacing the whole unit or having to deal with your brakes going out, that's no good. Now, if you've heard the sound for a while, obviously it's going to be working the motor a little more, but chances are good if you replace that accumulator, you'll be able to save it. I bought my other 2003 and it was chirping at me. There was a really loud sound coming from the accumulator. I swapped a new one in and it's been fine for the last 100,000 miles. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you're looking for accumulator parts, check out lusooverland.com and I'll catch you guys on the next one.